They ask. You stay silent. Not because you don't know the answer, but because you understand one thing. Every explanation is a rope tied to someone else's hand. The more you speak, the tighter they hold. People like to think that clarity will set them free. But most of the time, it only takes away one thing: mystery. And mystery is the last layer of armor. I've seen people lose everything just because they tried to set the record straight, and I've seen others stand firm, not by speaking, but by knowing when to stay quiet. If you've ever felt the urge to explain yourself to someone, stay here. This story isn't just about silence. It's about how silence becomes the one power no one can take from you. Part 1. The price of an explanation. The moment you start talking, start explaining, is the moment you lose something fragile but more precious than any defense: uncertainty. Uncertainty is the shadow that makes others cautious. It is the distance between what they know and what they think they know. When you open your mouth, when you arrange each word to make things clear, you lift that curtain. You think you are carefully building a wall, but in reality, you are opening the door, inviting them into a place where only you should have the right to stand. Explaining is not just words, it is an invitation. An invitation for others to step into the space you have kept closed off, the space from which they can see the cracks in the structure you've tried to hide. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "Power declares, power acts, power does not explain." He did not speak with the tone of a man who loves empty metaphors. He lived in a world where a single moment of weakness, a defense that was too long, could be enough to trade for death or exile. In that world, those in power did not need sympathy. They needed fear. They needed distance. And that distance only existed when they kept silent. If you take that principle out of the book and place it into today's life, you will see it clearly present. A press conference, bright lights, dozens of microphones aimed at a man in a gray suit. He is the CEO of a company rumored to be merging with its biggest competitor. Questions fired like arrows. Has the deal been finalized? How will this affect staffing? Will anyone be laid off? He did not nod, nor did he shake his head. He simply smiled, bowed slightly, and said 4 words: "You'll see." No more. No less. 10 minutes later, the company's stock price rose, not because the rumor was confirmed, but because that gap of information created a wave of curiosity. People began to guess. Each person guessed differently, and among countless hypotheses, not a few sounded more powerful than any truth could. This mechanism is simple, yet hard to endure. Human beings inherently hate gaps. The brain cannot stand not knowing, so it fills in the blanks with stories. Those stories, once they begin, tend to weave themselves, to grow on their own. You don't need more words. They will help you do that work themselves. The problem is, when you explain, you take away from yourself the strongest tool, the imagination of others. You do their work for them, and in return, you receive looks that no longer carry caution. This is not only true on the stage of power. In a private conversation, the principle does not change. You are asked why you didn't come to a party. Just saying busy and remaining silent will make them think you have something bigger going on. But if you start listing details, backlog of work, family requests, trivial errands, the picture of power disappears. Your reason becomes something for them to judge, to discuss, and sometimes to dismiss. There is one thing you need to remember. When you keep silent, you force others to face that gap themselves. It's like putting them into a dark room without turning on the light, without directions. They will fumble, speculate, feel uneasy. That feeling is your power. When you explain, you turn on the light, point to each corner, each object. They will nod, but the caution is gone. Machiavelli understood well that in politics, as in any game of power, what is left unsaid is sometimes more important than what is said. A decision at the right moment, an action without explanation, creates many layers of meaning. Each person adds a layer themselves, and the more layers there are, the harder your image is to break. So, before you open your mouth to explain anything, ask yourself, do I want to be understood, or do I want to keep power? You will see these two things rarely walk the same road. In a world where everyone talks, the one who knows how to remain silent, to let others live in uncertainty, is the one who keeps the distance necessary to stand above. And once you stand there, you will realize a cold truth. The curiosity of others, if nurtured correctly, will always be a stronger armor than any defense. Part 2. Why explaining makes you weaker. Explaining, in essence, is a way of asking permission to exist. You can deny it. You can say you only want clarity, only want others to understand you correctly. But deep down, every explanation is like an application form to approve your own value. Machiavelli did not use flowery words to hide this truth. He called it an apology in disguise. Because when you explain, you are sending a very clear signal. I care about what you think of me, and that can change the way I act. The trap lies in this. Once you have admitted that their judgment has the right to define your value, you have placed the steering wheel of your life in their hands. From that moment, they know that just by pressing the right spot, you will react. And that reaction, whether strong or weak, also shows that you are playing on their field. Imagine an office where a manager is labeled by employees as difficult. He may think he is simply a principled person, someone who does not easily accept carelessness. But if he sits down, forces a smile, and says, "I'm not difficult. I just want things done properly," then in that very sentence, he has unwittingly signed the ticket to losing his power. He has admitted that he needs them to understand him correctly in order to work effectively, that their respect is something he must maintain with explanations. From there, every time he makes a request, they will evaluate it through their emotional perception of him, instead of based solely on the reasonableness of the request. There is another image, clearer and easier to grasp. You live in a castle. From afar, people see it as solid, impenetrable. But then you open the gate, lead them inside, point to a crack in the wall and say, "Here, it's nothing to worry about." From that moment, they will never see your castle the same way again. They will remember the crack, will tell others about it, will be less intimidated when standing before the gate. The aura of invincibility has vanished just because you wanted to reassure them. Power, like magic, exists thanks to distance and mystery. When a magician stands on stage, he does not explain how the bird disappears. Precisely because he does not explain, the audience continues to marvel, continues to keep his image in their memory longer. But if he steps down, picks up the prop, and shows you every step, every trick, that performance will immediately fall flat. You still know he is skilled, but you no longer respect him as before. Explaining has taken away the aura, the halo of power that exists only when people do not know the whole story. So, every time you want to explain to be understood correctly, pause for a beat and ask yourself, am I protecting the truth, or am I seeking permission? The truth, sometimes, does not need to be spoken to exist. It exists because you act in accordance with it, and others are forced to see the result. But permission, that is something you will always have to ask for again, every time someone raises a question. And each time, your power moves a little further away from you. Machiavelli would tell you that if you want to keep power, never turn yourself into the magician who, right after performing, explains the trick. Let them go home with questions in their heads. Let imagination do its work. Because as long as others still have to guess, still have to fill in the blanks themselves, you are still in the position of control. Once you have filled every gap for them, there is nothing left for them to search for, and nothing left for them to be purpose. Part 3. The power of silence and mystery. In every conversation, there always exists a frame. People call it a frame, an implicit context, where whoever sets that frame is the one who directs the course of events. And most of the time, the frame is not spoken aloud. It just sits there, shaping how everyone looks at the matter. When you are drawn into having to explain, you have stepped into someone else's frame. You are no longer leading, you are only reacting, defending. And in that position, you will always be a beat behind, always passive, always the one answering instead of asking questions. Machiavelli did not spend many words on this matter. He was concise. Never defend. Act in a way that makes their doubts irrelevant. It sounds simple, but the key lies here. When you refuse to explain, you keep your own frame intact. You do not allow them to shift the story in another direction. Do not let yourself be trapped inside their questions. Instead of answering, you do something that makes that question unnecessary. I remember a story about politics. A candidate was accused of receiving shady financial contributions. The press swarmed, commentary was buzzing, everyone was waiting for a press conference. But he did not hold one. Not a single word of defense. Instead, just a few days later, he appeared publicly at the opening ceremony of a large-scale charity project, funded under his own name. The photo of him cutting the ribbon, shaking hands with children, appeared on the front page. And the accusations? They slipped down to page 4, then disappeared within 2 weeks. He did not win with words. He won by changing the frame of the story, from dirty money scandal to the man who builds schools for children. In personal life, the principle is no different. Someone disappears for a few days, then gets bombarded with questions. Where have you been? Why didn't you say anything? Instead of recounting the reasons, he shows up with a clear result. A personal project completed, a contract signed, or a difficult goal achieved. When there is a result placed in front of them, the question, "Where were you?" is no longer important. The other person will have to choose: continue digging into the past or look at the accomplishment now in front of them. Most of the time, they choose to look, and you have kept your frame. This is based on a simple but powerful psychological mechanism. Silence creates an information gap. That gap makes people uneasy. The brain hates not knowing. It will try to fill that gap with speculation, with imagination. And those imaginings rarely stay ordinary. They magnify. They grow more complex than reality. This vacuum of information is both pressure and a tool. If you know how to endure the silence and not rush to break it, that gap will work for you. But most people cannot stand it. They rush to fill the gap with explanations, thinking that will help them regain control. In reality, they are only allowing the other side to reset the frame and control the game. Keeping silent or acting in the direction you want is the only way to keep the frame in your hands. You may be misunderstood, misjudged, but those judgments still happen within the space you created, not theirs. Machiavelli understood clearly that silence and mystery are not avoidance, but strategy. You are not running from the question. You are simply refusing to answer within the frame the other person built. You replace that frame with action. And when that action is strong enough, the old question will no longer have value. People will no longer mention it, not because you explained, but because it is no longer timely to discuss. Keeping the frame is keeping power. And in any confrontation, that matters more than winning an argument. Because an argument only gives you a short-term victory, while the frame, if it is in your hands, will give you long-term power. Part 4. Practical application. 3 power scenarios. When accused, the instinct of most people is to jump right in, to refute, to post, to give interviews, to explain everything in full. They think that by doing so, they will extinguish the fire. But in reality, those defenses are like wind blowing on embers, making them flare up even more. Every sentence you speak is a signal that the accusation matters, that it affects you, that you need others to understand you are innocent. Machiavelli would tell you, remain silent. Continue doing your work. Let success be the thing that speaks in your place. When you are still there, still moving forward, still producing results, the accusation is gradually pushed out of the frame of the story. Your silence makes the accusation small, like a distant noise not worth turning your head for. Betrayal is the same. When someone turns their back on you, the instinct is to tell everyone, to bring the story to light, to find allies to witness that you are the wronged party. But that is the fastest way to turn betrayal into a public play, where you and the betrayer stand on equal footing, facing each other before the crowd. And in such plays, the power is no longer yours. The strongest way is to remove the betrayer quietly, without explanation, without announcement. One day, they simply disappear from your circle. People will whisper, "What happened?" This curiosity makes them wary, because they don't know what you did, don't know where your boundaries are, only knowing that once crossed, they too will vanish like that. This ambiguity is more frightening than any threat. Reputation is something many believe can be fixed with words. They rush into arguments, trying to clarify or set the record straight. But every time they do so, they are placing their reputation in the hands of others to be graded. Machiavelli understood this too well. Reputation is not fixed with words, but with results. If you build achievements clear enough, strong enough, undeniable enough, then even critics must adjust their story to match reality. You do not need to convince them that you are different from what they think. You only need to make reality force them to rewrite their words. When a wall is built high enough, people stop talking about its foundation. These 3 situations may look different, but the principle is one. Do not let others ask the questions and force you to answer within their frame. When you stay silent or act in your own way, you keep the frame. And the frame is what determines who holds power. In all three cases, accusation, betrayal, and reputation, words are weaker than silence combined with action. Speaking too much only makes the story drag on, while silence forces others to face the gap they cannot fill. And that gap, if you know how to keep it, will work for you. Machiavelli would smile, because this is power in its purest form. Not loud, not seeking permission, yet always felt. Part 5. Building a legend and surviving the hunt. Power lies not only in what you do, but also in making others believe that you always have a plan in hand. That is the art of legend building. Not by telling your own story, but by letting others tell it for you. To do that, you must know how to leave gaps, unfinished details, loose ends that people cannot stop talking about. When there is no clear answer, the human mind will weave its own. And if you are patient, the stories they create will be stronger than any publicity you could produce yourself. I remember an investor who withdrew from a project right when it was at its peak of success. No press conference, no letter to shareholders, no explanation. He simply quietly signed the papers, left his position, and disappeared from the news. Years later, people still spoke of that decision as a secret move. Some said he had foreseen a crisis before it happened. Some guessed he withdrew to prepare for a bigger deal. No one knew the truth, and it was precisely that not knowing that kept his name alive in people's memory. He did not need to explain, because the rumors did the work for him. But there will be times when the whole world is against you. There will be times when accusations, suspicious looks, and fabricated stories pile up, all aimed at you. At such times, the instinct of most people is to fight back with words, to defend, to correct, to retell the story from the beginning. But Machiavelli would tell you, don't try to win with words. Win by disappearing. Your absence is a double-edged sword. If you know how to hold it, it will cut through the crowd's anger. Public rage is like a wildfire. It flares up fiercely but dies quickly. Prolonged silence will force them to look back, to doubt their own memory. 1 day, 2 days, then weeks pass, and the story that once made them furious will no longer be as vivid as before. They will begin to ask each other, was that really as I thought? And when that question appears, you have already begun to win. There is one final rule, and it is a cold one. Never try to win back those who turned. Let them rot. Once someone has forced you into a position where you must explain, it means they have placed themselves above you. If you try to persuade them, you are admitting to that. The only way to regain the upper hand is to leave. No noise, no farewell, no looking back. Surviving in a world that hunts you is not always about striking back forcefully. Sometimes it is about knowing when to disappear, when to leave an unanswered question, when to let the story drift with the wind without laying a hand on it. And when you return, you do not return to explain. You return to keep moving forward, as if the storm had never happened. Those who remain will look at you, unsure if they truly understand you. And it is precisely that uncertainty that will make them never dare to underestimate you again. Conclusion: the untouchable silence. You do not need to be understood. What you need is to be untouchable. There are people who live their whole lives just so that everyone knows exactly who they are, what they think, what they want. But the more they let others understand them, the easier they are to reach, the easier they are to hurt. As for you, if you want to stand firm, accept that there will be questions that will never be answered. When they talk about you, just let them talk. Do not rush to correct the story. Do not provide the missing pieces. Let them piece together your picture with mismatched, incomplete fragments. And it is precisely within that gap that power is formed. When they guess, they are giving you their time and attention. They are wasting energy building an image of you while you don't have to move an inch. Every assumption, every rumor is a layer of mist surrounding you, making you at once near and far, both real and imagined. And when that mist becomes thick enough, you will find yourself in a position where your words are no longer necessary to protect yourself. One day, the truth will come out, not because you chose to reveal it, but because time and events will uncover it on their own. And when that happens, it will not be for them to forgive you. Forgiveness is something reserved for the weaker, for the ones who ask. The only thing they will realize when the truth appears is that they had underestimated you. They had not understood you, and they will never again have the chance to fully understand you. Silence is not running away. It is a deliberate choice, a fence you build so that no one crosses without permission. And when you understand this, you will no longer feel the urge to explain everything. You will know that sometimes the strongest thing you can say is to say nothing at all. Never explain yourself. Ever.